Mother-in-law secretly gave me food I was allergic to. I could have died. Years later blamed me for looking healthy instead of looking like someone with food allergies, whatever that means. This happened several years ago, but I think what happened belongs on this subreddit. Back when my husband and I were dating, his mom made it very clear she didn't like me, or mainly didn't like that he had a girlfriend. I firmly believe she wanted him to stay single and only love and adore her for the rest of his life. The background is we started dating when I was 19. He was 21. We lived in different states, about an hour and a half apart, and met because he and my sister went to the same college. His mom lived about 3 hours away from both of us. A year into our relationship, I suddenly developed a ton of allergies after a surgery I had. I had always had several food allergies, but this was different and I had to get EpiPens and all that. I would later find out I have a genetic condition, but at this point, I only knew what I could and couldn't have. One of the things I absolutely couldn't have was milk. Things would not happen this way now, but back then I was young and still learning to navigate having all these allergies, and during a visit, I let her pressure me into eating a dinner she made. I was 20, dumb, and felt unsure how to respond. It was baked fish, and I asked many times if it had milk, carrots, or celery since those were the allergies I carried EpiPens for. Quick side note too, my husband tried to show her how to administer my EpiPens in case for whatever reason I ate something or was stung by something and she was closer and could help. She laughed and refused to pay attention and would later laugh more saying she didn't care and I could do it myself if I needed to. Anyway, when I asked her again and again if it had any of those 3 foods, she said no firmly and made sure it was clear she thought I was rude for asking. So I take one bite and my mouth immediately starts to itch terribly. The first sign of anaphylactic shock. I spit it out into my napkin right away and run to the garbage can and start throwing up. Thankfully, I've always been allergic to cats and she had 7, 6 of them being inside cats. I was already on so much Benadryl to suffer through the visit. I think that saved me from having to use my EpiPens. But still, I felt sick for 3 days. I went to his room to rest and throw up more and she walks in and says, there is milk in the fish, but it shouldn't matter. She has had milk before. My husband was angry and said we told her it changed. She shrugged it off and left. The next day before he took me home, she complained I was staying in his room the entire time, but no, I felt awful. Because he was still in college and they paid one of his loans, car insurance, and phone bill, we were afraid to say too much. We also worried if we said anything, they wouldn't let him come home anymore and he would have nowhere to live when not in school. I also felt sad at the thought of him not getting along with his parents, although even when we met he had a long list of reasons he would be justified in cutting them out of his life starting at early childhood and onward. I convinced him to just drop it for the time being and I just wouldn't go back to their house. I'm 28 now, and looking back, I still don't regret that decision. He ended up graduating and moving out. He now makes decent money and a steady career. To this day, I think she would have done whatever she could to sabotage that had we done anything to speak out against her for this. Things remain not great and lots of other things happened, but that isn't relevant to this situation. Skipping ahead a few years, my husband and I are married and living in an apartment in my hometown. She is not happy he married me and moved 3 hours away from her. We invite his sister for a weekend visit and she casually mentions it to their mom, who promptly announces she is coming too. Husband gets a call from his sister apologizing and also rescheduling her visit for the weekend before, which we agreed to. His mom hated if the two of them spent time together without her, probably because they would get to talking and always find out the huge inconsistencies in the lies she tells. Trying to make things work, I tell my husband she can come, but to make it clear she is not allowed to bring food into our apartment. So he tells her, she agrees, and he asks her for a grocery list so we can buy anything that doesn't have carrots, celery, fish, or peanuts. Those were literally the only 4 things that couldn't be in the apartment. I'm actually not allergic to peanuts and never have been. But I was a nanny for years to a little girl who his mom knew was allergic to peanuts. The girl was 7 at the time and in school, so I wasn't her nanny anymore. But to this day I see her as my little sister and even still have her over regularly for sleepovers. We didn't trust his mom to have peanuts in our home where my little sister played. We bought all the stuff on the list and told her she had free access to the kitchen at any time, which she utilized. The day she got there, she brings in juice with carrots. My husband was angry, but I said just take them back out to the car. My husband tried to confront her, but she flipped it on me, trying to force me to disclose literally my entire medical history and kept asking very invasive questions about my body and health. I was fully caught off guard and answered a few, but when I asked why she was doing this, she said, "If you don't tell me all about your health, how am I supposed to know what you're up against?" I politely said she didn't need to know. All she needed to know was what food not to bring into my home. Then I said, I understand invisible illnesses can be confusing and surprising, but just because you can't see them doesn't make them less valid. As soon as I said it, her eyes lit up and she got a big smile because she had just found what she would latch onto. She excitedly said, yeah, how was I supposed to know you really couldn't have milk? You don't look sick, you look healthy. If you hadn't tricked me into thinking you were healthy, I never would have given you the milk to try and prove you were faking your allergies. I snapped back, I don't look sick. How do you want someone with food allergies to look? Would you feel better if I were in a wheelchair or something? Would that fit your definition of sick and make you more comfortable? Needless to say, the conversation didn't go great after that and I got up and left the room. That night I was so angry I didn't want to talk to my husband about it. To make the visit even more fun, she would always go through our stuff. I took the closet off the tracks in the guest room prior to her visit so she would at least stay out of that. I was woken up at 6 a.m. to the sound her rattling the stupid closet door in an attempt to get in. Still angry, I went back to sleep. My husband got up at 7, I got up at 8. We suffered through the rest of the visit and she left. This would actually be the last time I ever saw her since he went no contact later on. I enjoy cleaning and take pride in my house being tidy, so the next day when I did my usual chores that include moving the couch to vacuum, I found the peanut brittle shoved under the couch. It was shoved so far back it couldn't have been dropped. My dog couldn't even reach it. That's a whole other story, so maybe I will do part 2, the peanut brittle debacle. Update. It's been a while, but I once posted about my mother-in-law intentionally giving me something I'm allergic to and told me, if you hadn't tricked me into thinking you were healthy, I never would have given you the milk to try and prove you were faking your allergies. When I left off, it was the last visit she ever had with us. She had gone home, and I found peanut brittle under the couch. I'm pretty sure the original post is still in my post history, but I'm on mobile and don't know how to link it. Edit. This is long overdue because I'm lucky enough to be no contact and therefore don't have to think about her much. So I just forgot all about part 2 until this week when I was contacted by one of my husband's cousins. A quick recap. Sister-in-law visited the weekend before and we had a great time. Mother-in-law was there the following weekend. I have food allergies, but I'm not allergic to peanuts. My little sister, who frequently stays with us, has a serious peanut allergy that mother-in-law was very aware of. Mother-in-law was still convinced I am allergic to peanuts, though. We also told mother-in-law not to bring in outside food during her visit. And we bought everything off her list and told her she could eat whatever she wanted from our kitchen and she isn't shy, so that wasn't a problem for her. So that morning she woke up early to go through our stuff. No surprise there, but still really annoying and creepy. Apparently, while she was up an hour before my husband, she got hungry going through our stuff and decided to eat the secret peanut brittle she brought despite us buying the instant oatmeal, fruit, and cereal she likes. I found out because after her visit, when I did my usual cleaning for the week, I moved the couch to vacuum and found peanut brittle shoved way back. It absolutely had to be intentional because my dog couldn't even reach it. The floor was also carpeted, so there was no chance of rolling, sliding. At first, I had no idea what it was, but I got my kitchen gloves on and picked it up. Once I got a better look, I realized what it was and took it to my husband. He was livid. He put it in a Ziploc bag and first called his sister because he knew when he confronted his mom, she would throw her under the bus. Ironically, his sister hates peanuts, and it's apparently somewhat of a joke at holidays how much mother-in-law loves peanut brittle but sister-in-law hates it. It's also important to make clear sister-in-law is very kind and respectful of my allergies. Husband and I are both sure she would never do anything like this at all, but he calls her and explains the situation and she of course denies knowing anything about it and says she would never do that. He tells her we know, but he wanted to tell her first in case she got a call from mother-in-law. Then he calls mother-in-law. He was sitting at the dining room table and I was in the living room playing a video game, but I heard most of it and it went like this. Husband: Hey mom, did you eat anything you brought into the apartment during your visit? Mother-in-law: No, and I don't appreciate you accusing me of it. Husband: Yeah, but when we were cleaning we found peanut brittle under the couch. We wouldn't do that since is allergic. Mother-in-law: How dare you call me and accuse me of that? What, so you think I am some kind of monster? Husband: No, but someone put it there and it wasn't us. Mother-in-law: So it's automatically my fault. How do you know it wasn't your sister? She was just there too, you know. Why is it automatically me? Husband, still staying calm: I just got off the phone with her. She said she didn't and we both know she doesn't even eat peanut brittle. Mother-in-law, starting to fake cry: So just because I like peanut brittle, it had to be me. Why are you always accusing me of trying to hurt people? What have I done to deserve to be treated this way by my own son? He got to the point he was struggling to not snap and point blank said to stop lying. and that everyone knows she did it. With more tears and yelling, here is a list of excuses she shot back, one right after the other, not even giving him time to respond. It wasn't her, it was sister-in-law, and sister-in-law just forgot. Sister-in-law did it but is afraid to admit it because he will tell at her. She ate a granola bar in the car before coming in and some must have stuck to her clothes. It was peanut brittle, but from last week, and it must have somehow ended up in her coat pocket and fell out and went under the couch. The visit was mid-July in America. She wasn't wearing a coat. It could have come from anyone. Sometimes she mindlessly gets out snacks and doesn't even realize she is doing it and then has no memory afterward. It stuck to someone's shoe in the apartment hallway and ended up under the couch. The dog found it outside and hid it to eat later. It didn't even happen, there was no peanut brittle, and it was a plan I made up to punish her. Blame sister-in-law again. Obviously, it didn't go great and she never admitted to it. Over the next few months, my husband would have a few phone calls that also went badly before going full no contact. There were a lot of things that happened even before I met him that added on to why he went no contact. But since many don't involve me, it isn't relevant or my business to share. But sharing what happened to me after all this time has been nice. As I said in my last post, I never told anyone other than sister-in-law and mother-in-law's parents because I loved them and we didn't want them believing the lies of mother-in-law. They didn't believe her anyway. Maybe at some point I'll post some of the other stories that are more lighthearted, or at least don't involve attempted murder. It sucks, that is the kind of person she is, and I wish it were different. But I'm just glad I don't have to think about her often, and my husband and I are happily living our lives separate from that insanity. Now let's see what the community has to say. Opinion number 1 says, peanut allergy sufferer here. I had an aunt who didn't believe in allergies and she would always give me food that had peanuts in it as a kid. My mom, who is a celiac sufferer, already knew her tricks, always was there to take food out of my hands. My mom would bring food she made for us with her because she couldn't trust my aunt. One time my aunt snuck in a spoonful of peanut butter in my food and I ate it. I immediately went into shock and my epi was inserted and an ambulance called. My mom was furious and I was never allowed to be near my aunt again, and we always ate before going to a family event so we didn't eat at all if my aunt was there. I remember then my uncle's girlfriend was a cop and she was shocked when she realized my aunt knew about my allergy and did it to prove that my mom was lying. She told my aunt she is very lucky nothing happened to me. If something did, she would have arrested her for battery, attempted battery, and homicide. My aunt on that day didn't like my uncle's girlfriend. I adore her. So you literally could press charges against this woman. Cut her off and I would have kicked her out the minute she tried that crap. She would be packed up and out on the street. I wouldn't have endured another minute with her. Opinion number 2 says, I saw a TikTok recently that had a theory to explain why narcissists trigger allergies on purpose. They thought it might be because a narcissist believes in every relationship and even every conversation encounter there is a dominant person, the authority, and a submissive person or subordinate. When you lay a boundary or make a rule regarding allergens, you are acting as an authority, and they cannot tolerate being the subordinate, so they rebel or push back. You might even have better luck telling her, and are pretty much the only things I can tolerate eating these days. Please make sure you stock some for my visit to ensure she doesn't have any on the premises. Opinion number 3 says, people who test others' allergies are some of the worst type of humans. It takes a mind-boggling lack of compassion and empathy to just lie point blank to people about something that might injure or kill them. For people who don't have allergies or no PPL with allergies, here is the correct response. When I worked in theater, we had kids play extras, usually 15 or so kids every night. During intermission, the concessions would sell snacks. They sold Reese's cups sometimes. Until one night, one of the regular girls was away from the group clutching a bag. When I asked her why, she said she had a bad allergy to peanuts and was clutching her EpiPen. I told the higher-ups. That was the last night we sold peanut products. No questions to her. Her parents, they didn't even make an announcement. They just disappeared so that one little girl would be comfortable. I am also in the pile of allergies club. If someone tried to test my allergies, I'd be so screwed. I'm glad you're okay, and I'm glad you're well away from that monster mother-in-law. How about you guys? What do you guys think about this whole situation, and what would your advice be for OP? Let's all discuss in the comments section below. Story 2. I uninvited my mother to my wedding after she invited my father-in-law. Am I the jerk? My fiance, a 29-year-old female, and me, a 34-year-old male, are getting married in 2 weeks after 13 years of friendship and 4 years of dating. She's fantastic and our relationship has been so good for the both of us. Planning the wedding has been uncomplicated and fun. We included my mother a lot. For example, my fiance took her dress shopping. The reason is that my fiance has always had a good relationship with my parents, and it grew much closer over the past year after her mother died. They kind of see her as another child, and I know that fiance appreciates that immensely. As for my fiance's father, she went in see when she was 15, even before he hadn't played an important role in her life. His behavior was one cause in her having depression and low self-esteem. It took her years to heal. She's happy with the way things are now. I never met the man, so neither of us considered inviting him to the wedding. My mother, however, won't understand why we won't invite him. Mom is a retired psychologist. She's had some experience with children-parent reunification, and she thinks my fiancé needs that, even more after fiancé's mom's death. Fiancé and me both have shut my mom down plenty of times. We both made it clear that this man was not to know anything about my fiancé's life nor would be welcome anywhere near the wedding. For a while, my mom shut up. My mom doesn't know fiancé's father. The other night we had dinner with my family. My mom had an announcement. Apparently, she looked my fiancé's father up and went to see him. Then she invited him to our wedding. She seemed so pleased. My family was appalled and angry. They all know what has happened. My fiancé somehow remained calm and told Mom how inappropriate that was. How Mom hurt my fiancé terribly by stepping over the one boundary she ever had. How fiancé had lost all her trust in Mom after this. I then uninvited my mom and we left. Fiancé only broke down at home. My mother's also been inconsolable since and called me dozens of times, but I haven't picked up yet. Fiancé feels unsafe to have the wedding if there was a chance that her father might show up. We might just cancel the whole thing. My father, who's not condoning any of my mother's actions, thinks I should talk to Mom, hear her out. My siblings agree that uninviting her was too drastic. I just see the distress my mother had caused my fiancé and get angry all over again. So a WTF for sticking to our decision. This really blew up, didn't it? Thank you all for your advice and perspective. It's truly heartbreaking how many of you have estranged relatives and can relate to this. I'm sorry. I met my dad earlier. He's really sorry for what my mom did and how he pushed me to listen to her at first. I told him that my fiancé was the person hurt in this and that it was really up to her. Dad did offer to cover additional costs we might have now. Both siblings called individually to apologize to fiancé as well. What to make of it just now. It's a good start, I think. Haven't talked to Mom though. Also, my fiancé's brother-in-law had a good idea regarding the wedding. We might do it earlier. That way we'd at least keep the venue. We're still figuring details out, but it might actually work. Fiancé believes that her father doesn't deserve to know about her life since he contributed nothing to her well-being. Him now knowing things about her is one of the biggest worries she has. She said she feels violated and exposed. I don't think I can understand her feelings. All I know is that she's in a lot of pain. As others suggested, I might bring up the possibility of hiring security. I am tempted to send the invoice to my mom though. Rescheduling and relocating were our first instincts, which both sucks as the date and venue both carry meaning. I worry that the whole wedding, no matter how we proceed, would be tainted by my mother's actions. And yes, I'm worried about her father coming back too. He's a very sickly old man apparently, so I wonder if he might look for a chance to set things right before it's too late, and that he might see this as his opening. The more I think about it, the more angry I get. Update 1. This is the update repost to my first post, since a bunch of people asked for one. First, thanks for all the helpful comments, insights, and awards. We were very overwhelmed and grateful. And thanks to the mods for helping with this update. I've never had a post get this much attention and didn't know how to do this. The biggest thing is, we are married. In the end, my wife's sister and brother-in-law saved the day. Originally, the wedding was on the 18th at brother-in-law's restaurant. That was the date and place where we went from friends to dating 5 years ago. On the day of the OP, wife went to see her sister. They suggested having the wedding a week earlier, on the 11th. It felt like the best option. Brother-in-law was willing to do the work, because wife is like a sister to him. His team and him got a generous tip from my dad. Wife, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and I told all the guests save my family of the date change. Wife didn't want to tell people why. Amazingly, everyone made it work except for 3 people. My family was told the morning of the wedding, just to make sure wife's father would not have time to come to the wedding as he lives 15 hours away from us. My family didn't complain because they knew that they messed up. It was all a bit stressful, but my wife felt like a spy on a mission and had fun with it. I was glad to see her get excited again. And there was no sign of her father at the wedding, so I guess Mom finally listened. In the week before the wedding, we met my family to talk several times. These were long talks. Why my mom did it. She just thought she knew better. No excuse other than arrogance. They all apologized. My wife said one family torn apart by her father's actions was enough. She insisted that they were invited. So that was that. However, we made it clear that contact with her father would be punished much harder in the future, especially when it comes to children. It's forgiven but not forgotten, I guess. As to what wife's father found out from my mom, apparently not much. He knew a bunch already from my wife's eldest brother. Mom filled in gaps. That brother is the only of my wife's siblings that was still in touch with their father. Brother and wife were on thin ice before that already for many but different reasons. Yes, we let that brother attend the wedding, mostly because we didn't want more drama. But we'll tackle that when wife feels ready to do so. We did have a honeymoon to get to first. All in all, I think we are fine. Wife is very hurt still, more so by her brother's actions now. With my family, we'll work on it. The imminent threat is dealt with, now we start fixing the damage. Through it all, my wife was amazingly calm and reflected. It made me much more grateful that I get to be with her. Now let's see what the community has to say. Opinion number 1 says, NTO, cancel the wedding and go and elope instead. That kind of betrayal would be enough for me to consider going no contact with my mom. It wasn't just a small mistake or an oversight. It was a deliberate action to trample boundaries and to push an agenda you had made very clear you and your fiancé had no desire to pursue. As a retired psychologist, your mother should have known better than anyone just how damaging the actions she chose would be to your fiancé and to any existing relationship between the both of you and herself. Opinion number 2 says, I wonder what people expect from stunts like this. And even if your mom is a psychologist, is she your fiancé's psychologist? What kind of psychologist would do this to a patient? So honestly, NTA, maybe hear her out. I would with my mom, but I'd stick to the uninvitation if she thinks she can rack havoc knowingly. And tell her that she can be glad to just be uninvited from your wedding and not your whole life. Horrible behavior right there. Where OP replied, I suppose she expected gratitude and maybe that having a second parent would help fiancé grieve her mom better. She often thinks she knows what's best for her children. She, however, never trampled boundaries to this extent before. Until now, it's been limited to advice and recommendations. So I don't know how to deal with all of it. Opinion number 3 says, NTO, if your wife feels unsafe around your mom, then you would not be the if you kept your mom from the wedding. Your mom refused to listen and believe everyone telling her to mind her business because she thought she knew better. Well, she fricked around and found out. Only it was your fiancé who was hurt the most. Trust is hard to mend once broken. If you keep the wedding date, it's important is to make sure the dad doesn't show. Make your mom go back and tell him he isn't welcome. That if he shows up anywhere near the wedding, then the authorities will be called. Assign people at the wedding to keep watch for him and make sure he leaves. It would be a shame to call off the wedding. But if neither of you would enjoy it because she'd be so on edge about her dad knowing and showing up, then what's the point? How about you guys? What do you guys think about this whole situation, and what would your advice be for OP? Let's all discuss in the comments section below.